if we have no aftercare, where are we leaving? There's this drop off. There's nothing, And so it's sort of easing out of the sexual experience back into a connective experience in a different, like at a different energetic level. And it can continue too. We're not just talking like the 20, 30 minutes after a sexual encounter. It can continue like the next day, the next week,
Hmm.
between visits. And yeah, I think about it as connection.
Yeah. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy. You have me, Keely C. Helmick, owner of Connective Therapy Collective, as one of your hosts.
And your other host, Melissa DeSegurant, a therapist at Connective Therapy Collective.
So, in Portland, Oregon, today it's snow day. So, I'm just going to preface this with like, if anyone's watching the YouTube video right now, I am in fact in my bedroom, and you may see a random child pop their head in, but we will definitely make sure that Cardinal edits that out if that so happens.
Winter is back.
Yes, winter is back. I mean, it's glorious. I have my setup right now with my computer and Zoom that I can look at it while we're talking. But yeah, it's quite interesting. Melissa, do you want to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're up to? We're not an interview today, so we can kind of do a catch up. Like,
Sure. Like introductions and catch up all in one. Cool. Well, I'm Melissa. I use she, they pronouns. Like I said, I'm a therapist at Connective Therapy Collective. I am bisexual. I am polyamorous, non monogamously dating, and enjoying, I think, this weird winter day. I'm very confused. My system is very confused as to what's happening. I was really embracing spring and then it snowed. And I don't know. Ironically, I felt like this weekend was a lot of like winter themes and just for my own personal work, it felt like a very inward focused kind of like re-examining previous dark nights of the soul type energy. So it's interesting that it culminated in a snow day. It feels very fitting. But yeah, I don't want to go too far into it because then I'll spoil my queer joy. But yeah, I'm in an interesting state this spring, whatever whatever season we're actually in right now. I'm doing a lot of reflection. So yeah, there's not a
mm,
ton of like updates to report because it's a lot of internal work that will manifest later on, most likely in the fall and into next year.
cool. Okay. Yeah, I'm Keely C. Helmick, owner of Connective Therapy Collective. I am a queer sex therapist. I am queer, non-binary femme, white, able-bodied, currently practicing solo poly, non-monogamous, and looking out the snow. And so my eyes keep getting distracted by the beautiful snow. Yeah, I had a couple fun things, and I wouldn't necessarily label them as queer joy, so I'll have something else for the queer joy. What was fun is that I was able to actually practice the STARS acronym. Yeah, with a new partner. Okay. That's a whole nother thing, by the way, Melissa, that maybe we'll tackle today. I want to talk about verbiage and not gendered, like not boyfriend, girlfriend, but like other labels.
Gender neutral labels.
Yes, gender neutral language. So again, speaking of that new person and trying out the STARS acronym, it was cute and awkward. And it felt really good to be practicing.
Did you remember them all or did you like look it up together? Did you add in did you add in the porn conversation? I'm so interested.
So we did because I told them that they'd actually listened to the episode. And so I did bring that up and we did talk about porn. We did remember all the acronyms. Mainly, they had actually attended the workshop a couple years ago or somehow knew Eveline in some kind of context with like Sex Positive Portland. And so we did have the full conversation. And I will say, actually, I think the piece that we got stuck on more because this wasn't our first date. This was like we had hung out. We've been hanging out for a couple weeks now.
Mhm.
And the part about relationship intentions.
Ah,
Yeah. Got a little, and then we started kind of sidetracking about how we know people in common. And
you were avoiding the intentions and going to other other places.
yeah, and it was really interesting. What it reinforced to me is because there's pieces around, for instance, like the STI, STD checkups. Like I know my status. I get checked regularly. I get checked in between partners. I knew my status. So that was the easy conversation piece. And then turn ons and avoids. Like I have some basics that I run through with partners. Obvious, well, not maybe not obvious. I shouldn't say obviously, but for me, I know that my dynamic sometimes shifts what my turn ons and avoids are, but that there's like a general listing that is pretty easy for me to talk about.
Sure.
But then going into what I want in a relationship or what I'm looking for, or the intention to
Ah,
time and
ah,
some fumbling. And they were in the same place I was around that because they were like, yeah, I'm not sure. But we did complete the conversation and and even got, even went so far as talking about our dynamics within our households because they have roommates, I have a roommate. So even just things that navigating that. So it was a great warm up, and it really reinforced, plug with the upcoming workshop in a couple weeks. But it did reinforce the piece, which is the beginning of the workshop. And for me, a reminder of going through that by myself and
mm,
having some check-ins with myself around these topics so that I know what to say to other people. Because
yeah.
I'm change. What I want changes, all of these pieces change. And so, yeah, it was really interesting. And I will be curious. I wonder the feedback. I mean, the feedback from the person, they were talking, they were telling people that we were gonna have this like talk. And people were like, really?
I hear there was some judgment about the talk from
I
others.
think well, it's interesting. I think that I don't what I got from it was that their friends were had an idea of what our dynamic was in a different way that we're navigating. So I
Mhm.
think that there was this like edge of like super, super casual, and the person wasn't, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. But I think that was the piece is the friends were kind of like teasing and being like, oh, like where
Perhaps perhaps they don't get quite as excited as we do about communication.
yeah. Well, like this person does, but their friends, yeah, I think that
Yeah.
some of their friends are not like, oh my gosh, I want to sit and talk about this. So I think the piece, so tying in with our topic today, as we are navigating, because next week we have an interview, yay.
Woo.
So exploring more of this communication piece around sex, aftercare.
You've been so jealous, I'm not talking now. The ship has sailed since you walked out. Ship has sailed, ship
I
has
love
sailed,
when we've
ship
been
has sailed.
talking about aftercare, both in our workshops and groups about sex, and also kind of as we do with non-monogamy, how aftercare can be applied to so many things besides just sex. So it's a concept I think is really important and one I personally did not know until relatively recently, like within the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that there's been so just how so many things there's this piece of like cis heteronormativity, cis hetero monogamous normativity. And when we think of even the term aftercare, I think about how in the past, or when I think about something, how it's applied historically,
Mm,
people will think about this as like quote unquote pillow talk or different ways they think about talking about afterwards. Though honestly, this is such an important thing to talk about because many people actually don't think about it.
Right. Or don't
So
practice it at all.
no, they don't practice. It's like, oh, because when we think, like, let's even go back a little further. If we're thinking about sexual interactions that are cis hetero monogamous, there is a penis and vagina involved, and only two people in a bedroom, and sex ends or the sexual encounter ends when one, hopefully both, but usually, let's be real, statistically, one person has an orgasm and then it's done. Like that's
Right.
what we think of as sex. That is what we're taught. That is still the norm. Even in this bubble of like CTC, this bubble of what we do, that's the norm. And so then the pillow talk or talking about afterwards is usually pretty brief. From what I understand when I talk to folks, is like, again, this people fall asleep.
I was gonna say or non-existent. It's like when I think about if you had labeled anything I used to do as aftercare, it's like, okay, the penis, comes and then I go clean myself up and come back to a snoring person. like, like, does that count? Maybe that's not what we're going for aftercare. Like to be an interpersonal experience, not just like
Wow.
right.
Yeah.
Multiple
So
partners too. I'm not pointing out anyone in particular. That's my general past experience with sex with penises.
there you go. So we are saying, hey, let's explore all these other ways that we can have interactions. And I think that's part of when people come out of those situations, those sexual situations, not feeling satisfied or not feeling good.
Yeah.
It's not just about orgasm because people can report really enjoyable, satisfying sexual experiences even without an orgasm.
Right. Right. When I think about aftercare and the importance of it, I think about all of the like the chemicals that get released in our bodies when we
Yeah.
are having sex, and then if we have no aftercare, where are we leaving? There's this drop off. There's nothing, and so it's sort of easing out of the sexual experience back into a connective experience in a different, like at a different energetic level. And it can continue too. We're not just talking like the 20, 30 minutes after a sexual encounter. It can continue like the next day, the next week,
Mhm.
between visits. And yeah, I think about it as connection.
Yeah. And when you said the chemicals that are released, one of the main ones being oxytocin, not the only chemical, but when we think about oxytocin as the bonding chemical, then really aftercare is that opportunity to really solidify or form more of a bond with the person you're with. Now, if we're talking about a one night stand, that's very different, but we're not talking about that today. Like, yes, do we want to support aftercare from a fling or one night stand? Yes. This is what we're talking about more today, though, is that with somebody that you have a continued interaction with, and whether it be a casual, whether it be non-monogamous, long-term, married, what live-in nesting partner, whatever the case, how to really for yourself be connected with yourself and have that connection with that person. And I think one of the pieces is, like you said, is recognizing what's happening in that moment. Okay, so maybe you go clean up. Okay, great. Do you shower together? Do you like to shower together? Do you have a routine that feels good? Do you want to have that person, maybe you want to stay snuggle for like a certain amount of time before you go clean up?
Mhm.
Some people may be okay with that. Some people may be like, no, I need to clean up first. Like, I need to really. So then you can say, hey, by the way, can you stay awake for the next 15 minutes while I clean up so that we can stay connected?
I'll be right back. I'd like to cuddle when I'm done.
Yeah. I think about with aftercare is like actually still having certain topics off the table. like
Mm.
almost keeping, when I think about it, it's like the immediate aftercare
Mhm.
is still maintaining this bubble so that I don't want to hear about I don't want to think about work. For me, I don't want to think about my kids. I don't want to think about certain things.
Yeah.
But I'm in this like nice feeling of like sexualness.
Yeah, that's a great way of thinking about it. Like this little energetic bubble that you don't want to just pop right away and like, okay, jerk back out into like everyday life and tasks and routines and to-dos, like maintaining that the connectedness, but also just energetically that I don't know if it's a flow state or what that like like embodied state is that we're in, but maintaining that and sharing that together.
Yeah. And it's such an opportunity to keep that yummy feeling. Okay, an orgasm lasts, well, typical orgasms. Elongated full body orgasm, that's a whole nother sex topic, not for today. But we're thinking standard sexual encounter with an orgasm. The yummy feelings can really continue, even if you've already had the orgasm, if you've stopped, genital stimulation or your scene, your interaction has stopped.
Mhm.
But aftercare actually allows for that continued so that how that sexual encounter wraps up can really influence how the next sexual encounter feels or the next bid for connection can feel like from a partner.
Yeah, we've talked about transitions before, and this is exactly what this is. It's transitioning from that, being together in a sexual way to not, and how we are intentional about that and how we go about that can have a great impact on the relationship. And like you said, the next encounter.
Yeah, yeah. And so we just started talking about the like right away after the sexual encounter and borrowing from kink and BDSM and non-monogamy is, what does aftercare look like hours after a sexual encounter, and sometimes even like a day or two. Like sometimes, especially, I think it's really taken for granted what in literature and when we do research and talk about things, that there's always this underlying assumption that whatever work is done around sex, that it is with a monogamous, partnered, and honestly live in person.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so for non-monogamous folks, for folks that don't live together, and for folks that engage in kink scenes and BDSM scenes, the aftercare really can be applied to multiple hours or days later, like that in between.
It could be that text you get later that night or the next morning. Like it's like a check-in, right? With a certain,
Yeah.
a different, I guess, intention in mind, to check in, but take care of and continue the experience.
I have this pin that says, I want aftercare all the time, because for some people, aftercare is the thing for them.
Right. Well, as you
Like,
were saying that, it's like, because I've had the question, actually, oh, dating apps need to get on this. They have questions about foreplay, but do they have questions about aftercare?
wait a minute, rewind.
Yeah. Okay.
A-
I don't know many, but like apps such as OkCupid, for example, the opportunity where you can answer questions about lots of different things. And they'll have like, is foreplay important to you? And you get to rank your importance. But I have never seen one about aftercare.
Interesting.
So
And
now
I'm
that we're
actually wondering, yes. And I'm actually thinking, as we're talking about this, I don't think Evelyn addresses aftercare in her work either.
right. Well, because what you were saying about I want aftercare all the time, I'm like, yeah, because in my mind, that becomes the foreplay for the next, like it's all a big cycle and we just keep going.
So I love that, Melissa. I want to clarify what you just said, because it was a great thing you just said, is aftercare is the foreplay for the next sexual encounter.
Right.
Yeah. So how do we think about that? And that also ties when I think about folks talking about foreplay starts in the morning. Foreplay goes on. I mean, there's this like fluidity of this sexual energy that doesn't have to stop.
Right. Yeah. And what I want to say too is it's important to agree to this with your partner because what that could look like can vary drastically from person to person. For me, for example, I want the foreplay, I want the aftercare. However, I'm not someone who responds super well to direct sexual comments unless like I'm in the act of having sex. So if somebody just heard that, they may assume the foreplay is like, ooh, you want to do this. And I'm like, oh, nope, that's not for me. That's not foreplay. That's not
Define what
aftercare.
your foreplay is. Okay, so we're like adding on to the stars thing. Like, but this is what we were talking about too when we're talking about how we want to be talked to. And we were saying how I had mentioned earlier on what are certain pet names or certain labels.
Yeah.
And we're also thinking about how we want our bodies to be referred to. So I think the vocabulary, the requests and the discussion is around the vocabulary use.
Yeah, totally. It makes me think of the love languages too. Like, is your aftercare going to be in the form of physical touch or is it words of affirmation? Or do you want like a little gift or a little present? What could that look like?
Do you want to debrief what just happened, what felt good and what didn't feel good? Your like highlights of I mean,
Right?
that's usually what my aftercare. Of course, I super queer aftercare is like, let's analyze how did that work for you? How was that? Oh, that was great. Oh, that was fantastic. That was awesome.
We'll debrief.
Debrief. By the way, debriefing could last from 30 minutes to an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
I was joking with somebody, side note, I was joking with somebody, we were talking about quickies, and I was like, yeah, quickie to me, by the way, like queer terms is an hour. Like when I say quickie, like this idea of quickie is like 10 minutes or so, I don't know,
Right. Yeah.
10, 15 minutes in cis heteronormative terms.
Yeah. Yeah.
By the way, a quickie. I mean, I guess to me, 10 to 15 minutes is a bathroom situation. I pop like that's when it's 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a quickie.
It's good to clarify.
See, clarification.
Yeah. Aftercare could also just look like co-regulation. It can be non-verbal.
Yeah.
Be breathing together, and listening to music.
Yeah, that act of cuddling. Well, and that's interesting because if we look at, and I will say I have a hard time with the term foreplay because of the, again, cis heteronormative views of what foreplay is.
Yeah.
But in using this term as finding a term that talking about before the sexual encounter, before like really it's like when in research and when they talk about foreplay in most books, it's really like what happens before genital stimulation.
Right.
Like that's
Well, often it's like, which parts of the body do you touch before genital stimulation? And for me, I'm like, foreplay happens. So no, it's verbal, it's intellectual, it's spiritual, it's emotional. Like, yeah.
So clarifying all of that is, with foreplay is getting that right, getting that headspace and really understanding what that looks like. And that changes. That changes day to day, week to week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So having these conversations, but really noticing for yourself what you like about it.
Mm-hmm.
So as I often, when we talk about these topics, I think people are going to want like a step. I feel like people want to know, okay, so then what do I do? Like almost like step by step of how do I formulate aftercare or how do I formulate these pieces together? I will say that I'm thinking of, I don't know if we have something we can post on the website, but I do know that reflecting on kink and BDSM resources, that they often describe aftercare more thoroughly than any other place that I've seen.
Yeah. I mean, it starts, I think, with a conversation with it. We're adding on. Again.
And on the stars, Evelyn.
Well, now we're adding on the AF at the end. So now we're
stars AF.
Yeah.
There we go. Stars AF.
Foreplay.
We got to check in. By the way, sorry, Evelyn, we'll check in. We're joking around.
We are. No. But I do think having the conversation about it, like, hey, do you know what aftercare is? Is that
Yeah.
important
You
to
didn't know
you?
that term?
Yeah. Have you ever practiced that? Have you been intentional about that before? And then, I think you brought it up earlier. Really, it's a good idea to have this conversation with yourself so that you know what you're proposing. Not to say you have to know exactly what your aftercare would look like, but it would be good to practice having some language.
Yeah.
Even if the language is, I've noticed that I have this emotional thing that happens after I have sex with somebody. I'd like to talk about aftercare, but it's not something I practiced yet. Have you ever had any experience with it? And start there.
Yes. So really, if we're going step by step, or it really aligns with the general communication conversation, but
Yeah.
that really reflecting on yourself. So if you're listening to this podcast and you haven't heard the term aftercare, or it's new to you, or you're like, oh, I think what I do is aftercare. I just hadn't used that label for it.
Yeah.
Stepping back and seeing, because it's going to be a really good opportunity too to recognize where there's even within a sexual dynamic that isn't BDSM specific, there can be, so BDSM is called sub drop.
Mhm.
And with certain sexual, again, with sexual encounters, when we're talking about chemical releases and you have the dopamine and the oxytocin, and there can be a shift that feels kind of sad or less positive. Like there can be a drop that happens even in all types of sexual interactions.
Absolutely.
And that's the piece where why aftercare is so important in the kink dynamic, but again, can be applied to other situations where there's this continued communication or continued attention to wants and desires.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you're right about I think that's the first time I heard the term aftercare was when learning about kink. And I've had clients who are very specific with partners about how their systems work with the kink dynamics that they're engaging in. I've had clients literally tell people, like, okay, so afterwards, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to cry. You're going to go in the other room and grab some water. 10 minutes, I'll be okay. Then we're going to hug. Then we're going to kiss. And then we're going to watch cartoons. How's that sound? And it can't be like that specific. I mean, I love that.
That's lazy.
Right? Like, here's what works for me, and that's
Yeah.
awesome. And again, if you don't have that knowledge about yourself, or, you're not in a partnership at this point where there's that much explicit communication, it could be more like, hey, I might be a little bit emotional or tender. You're a new partner for me. Let's check in, a day after if we do have sex, just to see where we are, how we're doing.
Yeah.
And it could even look like you didn't talk about the aftercare, you didn't get it, and then you're addressing those feelings with a partner at the next check-in. And again, that's an opportunity to say, here's what came up for me. Like, what would this look like? Would it be okay if we checked in via text just saying, hey, I hope you're having a good week, like 2 days later, but using those as opportunities to build more connections and teach people about how we work and what works for us.
Yes. Building connections, what works for us, how to feel emotionally and physically safe with our connections and sexual interactions with others, and being aware of other people's needs and desires in these situations to also be able to care for other people while taking care of ourselves. Well, some more information about that will be discussed on the workshop, in the workshop,
During the workshop.
during the workshop, which will be a hybrid situation. It'll be a live workshop in Eugene, Oregon, but you can also access it online, and it'll be from 2 to 4 p.m. on Sunday, May 1st. Check out Eventbrite or our website for more details.
Since you left me, yeah, I've been so good since you left me.
So now's the time for Queer Joy, and it seemed like you were ready for Queer Joy because I'm going to rack my brain for a minute. I know I had lots of joyful things that happened this week, but I'm not sure which one I'm going to pick yet. Do you want to go ahead and go first?
Yeah, I will. I wish I wish it was as thought out in my brain as it seems like it is. It's not. Like I said, it was a really introspective weekend for me, which I needed to happen. I think I got a little off track with like not checking in with myself super regularly. And so, as the universe does, was like, hey, pause. One of the things I wanted to shout out, a great resource for listeners too, actually, Mina B. I don't know if I have the Instagram readily available, but I'll mention her again in future episodes. CIS in San Francisco. Actually, no, I think it's in the East Bay, California school did a workshop on boundaries that Mina B ran, and it was fantastic. It was a 4-hour workshop on Saturday. I found out about it the night before, so it was really spontaneous for me, but timely. And I did go in. I think this is why it hasn't totally integrated. I went in just as a person, not as a therapist. So I didn't have my
Yay.
clinical hat on. Yeah. And it needed to happen. I really went in to examine my own boundaries. And we did a lot of work back to childhood and then how that's manifested in relationships. And that's just, as you all know, that's been a theme for me for a long time. So it was great. I have a lot more processing to do. That kind of launched me into a very introspective weekend. But I recognized that my brain was starting to explode in a good way, but like it was a lot by like Sunday afternoon. I'm like, how am I going to, I'm starting a work week now. I haven't actually like gotten offline at all
Yeah.
of my own thinking and processing. So I went to another sound bath last night and it was awesome. It was so amazing. It was the same person who did it the last time, but definitely a little bit different in terms of the instruments that were used and the theme. And I just, yeah, find times to breathe and just exist because our brains really need them. So that's my career joy is that, yes, I did a lot of work, which is all great, but I also was able to reset before the work week.
Oh. Well, my queer joy has been really, I think it's about what these different dynamics with different people has given me the opportunity to be reflecting on what I want. And it's not like a very specific queer joy, but it's more of a fun little exploration of what does Keely actually want? And I've been asked that multiple times. And I even got the question last week, are you emotionally available?
I see the eye roll.
Oh my gosh. I'm just like, I don't know how to answer that. And then I got like really vulnerable and like nervous. And I don't know. But that does tie in with having spontaneity this weekend. And I had a really fun time randomly having something strange happen and then just spontaneously going to meet up with somebody and meet new people. And this is fun for me is walking. And I feel like this has been a theme sometimes with Pure Joy for me. And I walk into a place, I knew one person and then they introduced me to their friends and I got to meet other queer people and hear about their relationships because I love hearing about other people's relationships. And that is authentically something I still enjoy. I feel like doing this podcast, I enjoy it even more. Like it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
And I just have to admit it. I've been watching Ultimatum and I finished Ultimatum this weekend. And we don't get to find out till April 13th what happened.
There's the reason I haven't started yet. I've seen it.
You haven't started? Okay.
I haven't. No, I'm rewatching old other reality TV shows. Rewatch until like the next one.
Well, what's that? Okay, when you watch that, we're probably gonna have to talk about it because one thing I will say before we wrap up our episode today is that it's really interesting watching it from a poly dynamic because I'm like, okay, so what? You all are like trying to decide whether this is the one, and then crazy, you find out that you can have feelings for two people at the same time.
Right. Well, that was like honestly the the last season of The Bachelor, which the more that I watch that show, the more like it's like a horror show for me now. It truly is. And at the end, they're like, they can't be in love with more than one person. I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds so foreign to me now. I don't even know how to like take this in. This is like it's the train wreck that I can't look away from.
Isn't that all reality TV is that we're doing? Like we're driving slowly by the car accident.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well, more to be discussed. I'm talking about a little bit on my TikTok. So if people want to hear more about my opinions of Ultimatum, you're welcome to please follow me on TikTok. Well, that's it for today. And definitely more to be said, but yay for another episode. And thank you everyone for listening and following. Please, if you have a moment, it really does help us if you can leave comments and rate us and, give us good reviews. That's awesome. And otherwise, look forward to chatting again next week and hope you all have a queer and joyful week.
Thanks for listening to Queer Relationships, Queer Joy, a podcast by the Connective Therapy Collective. Hosted by Keely C. Helmick and Melissa DeSeguron, with audio edited and produced by me, Cardinal Marking. Intro music is by Bad Snacks. Outro music by Victoria Instrumental. If this episode made you smile or think, tell us about it. If you hated it, tell us about that. Review us on iTunes or Spotify. Yes, you can review on Spotify now. Or send us an email at info@connectivetherapycollective.com. For information on our workshops and for more queer joy, visit our website at connectivetherapycollective.com. Love ya. Bye.